Now so we can get started. 1 second. So hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Tracy Martinez, I'm the school social worker for all 3 primary schools, and I'll be presenting today along with Michelle Vincent, who is the social worker at Stewart School, as well as Kristen DeMartinis, the school social worker at Stratford School.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
So our vision in the Garden City School District is to inspire and challenge our students to accomplish their personal best. And for many of our students, that means collaborating and informing our families of outside support services that may be available to them in order to support the student and their families and to build on their many and varied strengths. And as your friendly neighborhood social workers, we are here to assist you with information, with resources, referrals, and support that may be helpful to you and your family. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We will show all of our contact information at the end of the presentation. So in the Garden City School District, we want each student to grow at an optimal level and achieve academically, socially, and personally. We want our students to be in a learning environment where they are challenged, they have an enthusiasm for learning, they have respect for themselves and for others, and we want our students to be creative and independent thinkers. So today's presentation is all about OPWDD, and we've structured the presentation to address 4 main questions in order to just provide a general overview of OPWDD, starting with what is OPWDD, what is the eligibility criteria for acceptance, how do I apply, and what supports will they offer my family should my child get accepted. So OPWDD stands for the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. It is the New York State office that provides oversight and funding for services with people with developmental disabilities. The state is broken down into 5 regions and each have their own regional office. So on the website, OPWDD refers to the divisional office, the regional office, as a DDRO. So you'll see that acronym. It stands for Developmental Disabilities Regional Office. And Long Island happens to be region number 5, and the office for OPWDD is located in Hauppauge. You'll also see on OPWDD that they reference something called the front door. This is the first stage of OPWDD. So the front door is the way that OPWDD connects you to the services that you want and need. Once you enter, a person-centered planning process begins, and that helps you learn about and access the service options that take your needs and desires into consideration. So in order for a person to be eligible for OPWDD services, New York State mental hygiene law requires the following things. So first, there has to be a presence of a developmental disability that is described by certain qualifying diagnoses or conditions. Also, the disability must have occurred before the person reached age 22. The disability can be expected to continue indefinitely or permanently. And the disability causes a, quote, substantial handicap to a person's ability to function normally in society. And that's a direct quote from the OPWDD eligibility website. So developmental disabilities are special conditions that may occur anytime before a baby's birth up until the age of 22. And a developmental disability can take many different forms. Developmental disabilities are different from developmental delays, which show up as a lag in one or more areas of growth or skill. Developmental delays can be reduced by providing early intervention services and special education services, including special help in the classroom. A developmental disability may cause a child to develop more slowly or to have physical difficulties and limitations, or it may cause them to have trouble learning and growing, and it continues throughout a person's life. So sometimes a person may have more than one condition or disability that qualifies as a developmental disability. Developmental disabilities that qualify a person for OPWDD eligibility include, but are not limited to, an intellectual disability, which is generally considered an IQ under 70, autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, familial dysautonomia, Prader-Willi syndrome, and a neurological impairment, including injury, malformation, or a disease involving the central nervous system. So OPWDD is a service designated specifically for individuals with a developmental disability. So as standalone diagnoses, the following conditions would not qualify a person for OPWDD. So mental illness or a psychiatric diagnosis, a loss or absence of senses, motor skills or physical abilities, mild forms of conditions such as cerebral palsy or a seizure disorder, or a brain injury if there's no substantial handicap. So if an individual had one of these conditions, in addition to a qualifying developmental disability, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask all our participants to mute so that everyone is able to.
But I'm like looking at her and she goes by Martinez, I think.
Thank you. So if an individual has one of these conditions, in addition to a qualifying developmental disability, they could receive services based on the developmental disability. But if an individual had one of these conditions without a qualifying developmental disability, there may be other services available, which we can also help with, but it wouldn't fall under the auspices of OPWDD. So for example, if a child had a significant psychiatric concern, that might fall under a different office called SPOA, which we could also help with an application, but it wouldn't fall under OPWDD, which is really what we're concentrating on today. Okay, so the term substantial handicap, again, is taken directly from OPWDD eligibility website. And for OPWDD, substantial handicap means that a developmental disability is so serious that it makes it very difficult for a person to live everyday life independently. So this is not something that can be stated to OPWDD subjectively, and there's not a process where the OPWDD eligibility unit is going to actually meet your child or meet your family. Rather, they rely on evaluations performed by qualified professionals to describe why the disability would fit this description, highlighting the impact of the disability on the person's everyday functioning.
All right. So now I'm going to just chat a little bit about how to apply. So what do you need to apply? There are a lot of paperwork that needs to go to OPWDD in order to qualify. So the first thing is the OPWDD application. That is the basic application with your child's basic information, age, date of birth, and so on and so forth. That is something that your school social worker can help you with completing the transmittal form. Then the second piece of information OPWDD would need would be the physical examination. That is from your child's pediatrician. It just needs to be completed within the last year. The third thing is a psychosocial report. This is a little different from a social history report, but this is completed by your school social worker. It really is a document that encompasses your child's history from birth to present time and their current functioning. Also, I wanted to mention when we do begin to apply and start this process, there is HIPAA forms. So OPWDD has a HIPAA form to sign, and the district also has a HIPAA form to sign, just giving consent that we are allowed to share these documents with OPWDD. And then I'm going to jump into some of the other things that we need to apply. I just want to preface this by saying there's a lot of information on the next couple of slides. Don't feel stressed to write this down right now. All of this information will be given to you, being that you reach out to the school social worker, and we can really walk you through what all of this means and what we need to gather to apply. So I just wanted to mention that. So you need the fourth piece of information that we need is the psychological evaluation, which must contain IQ testing. So the two most common measures are the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale and the WISC scale. So the IQ of 69 or below is considered an intellectual disability. An IQ of 70 or higher would then require another developmental disability, which could include autism. And so these are two most common psychological evaluations, and that would be something that we would need for that process. And then the fifth piece of evidence that we would need would be the adaptive behavior testing. So the VABS and the ABOS, these two scales, and adaptive behavior testing is essentially, we want to look at how the child is functioning independently, right? Without the support of a teacher, a parent, an adult, are they able to complete certain tasks, right? And they're also looking at how they interact with other people as well. So this is really just to gauge the child's independent living skills. And so when doing an adaptive behavior composite, the score must be 69 or below in order to receive a diagnosis, or regardless of a diagnosis, excuse me. And then if your child does fit under the umbrella of having autism ASD, there would need to be proof of autism spectrum disorder. And there are 3 different options for this. So I have a gold star next to this one. This is the ADOS, the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. And this is the preferred way of, the preferred measure rather, that OPWDD likes to see. They call it their gold standard, right? And this is something, this is a format, it's a standardized format, and it kind of observes the characteristics of autism, and it kind of tries to observe the child in the social interaction, within play, and noticing any repetitive behaviors. It assesses their communication and their social interactions. And at the district level, we do provide parents with receiving the ADOS from the district, but it is it does take some time. So we just wanted to let you know that we do provide that on the district level. It's just a timely process. And then if the ADOS is not something that you have completed, there's also the CARS, the Childhood Autism Rating Scale. This would be in addition to the ADOS. So this is a rating scale that can be completed by a psychologist, just trying to diagnose the severity of the autism and really looking at the functioning. Again, very similar to the ADOS, but I think with the CARS, it's always good to have more information just to really paint a picture to OPWDD of what is actually going on with the child, so that we can include that as well in the application. I think the more the better to paint that picture. And then the third option for ASD would be the autism diagnostic interview. This is given, the interview is given to the parent and caregiver. It's really looking at the developmental history of the child, looking again at those social interactions, the communication, that language, right? Again, this is really wonderful to have along with the ADOS, just being that the more information, the better, really helps paint a picture. And then the things that you could get from us would be the current IEP that gives the OPWDD a really clear understanding of their academics, how they're accessing their academics and what supports they need. If your child has an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, or a behavior intervention plan, that would also be attached to that as well if that applies to your child. And then any educational evaluations that have happened at the school. So the speech evals, OT, PT, anything that really, again, paints the picture and is from within the last 3 years. And then the 10th thing that we would put into the application is just any documentation that you have about the diagnosis. So any medical documentation that would be relevant to the developmental disability. And I know that's a lot, but that's pretty much encompassing the application process.
Okay. So most evaluations can be provided by the school district. If you do choose to go outside to an outside provider in order to complete testing, we just ask that you please make sure that the most recent version of the testing is completed. They need the most recent version of the testing protocol, because OPWDD only accepts the most recent version of the testing kit. So we just don't want anyone to get caught in a situation where it's not, where you've had that performed and then it is not able to be accepted.
Ms. Martinez, one of the things I just wanted to mention is parents, just so everybody knows, OPWDD prior to the pandemic was taking about 3 months to get application done and approved or not approved. And now that we're post-pandemic, it's taking a lot longer. So one of the things that we have been encountering is that everything is handed in on time in a timely manner, up to date, and then by the time they look at the evaluations, things become outdated, and that becomes very frustrating to families. We've been in touch with OPWDD to express our frustration with this part of the process, but it is what it is at this time. So we're just trying to work together with them, and if we have to get updated materials, we will, and we'll try to do that as timely and as expeditedly as we can to make sure that there are no longer delays. So typically, what we've seen is, for example, I've submitted packets in the spring. They weren't looked at till October. By then, physicals were out of date, or maybe an eval might have been out of date. And so then they'll give you a letter saying, hey, you have till X date to give us back the updated testing. And we've been working with parents and the person written on the letterhead to provide the updated testing. So I just wanted to kind of mention that because that's something that we've been encountering and has been kind of frustrating for our families. Okay, so Medicaid will typically cover the cost of evaluations at an approved site if your child has Medicaid. Grants are available for people who are not Medicaid eligible for free evaluations. But again, most of the evaluations that you need during the process are things that the school district typically does. And when choosing an outside provider, some people like to go through their own providers, and that's fine. You just have to make sure that they're using the most recent version of a testing kit. So for example, they have to use the most recent Stanford Binet, the most recent WISC. If they're using a dated testing protocol, they will not accept the evaluation. Mrs. Martinez, can you just flip this slide? Because I think you're the one. Thank you. Okay. So what do we do after we get all this documentation together? We have to mail the packet to OPWDD's eligibility unit. Typically in the past, we've encouraged parents to either let us mail it out or parents mail it out. I always send things return receipt requested because as you can imagine with the state office, they get a lot of paperwork. Things can get lost in the mail. This year, they've started to accept paperwork via email, which is nice because I get the return receipt requested over the email. We print it out. We always keep a copy in the file. And if there's any issues, we can go back and say, nope, on such and such a date, so-and-so read the email. So we usually typically include a medical assessment, the psychological, the psychosocial, proof of the ASD diagnosis, and any other documents that we have, IEP, FBA, speech reports, anything that we can give to paint the full picture of the child. Of course, the OPWDD transmittal form, and then there's always a release of information form that is done through the state and also through the district that we give them. So what happens after you receive, you get accepted? So you'll get a letter letting you know that you're deemed eligible or provisionally eligible. Students who apply before the age of 8 are considered provisionally eligible, and so they have to reapply after the age of 7. So once a child turns 8, they have to reapply. If no letter comes after 3 months, I would say even after 6 months at this point, you want to contact your local front door office. And I'm going to share my screen now to give you. If I share this is going to stop your screen share. Okay, let me see if I can do both. Okay. Sorry, we're just transferring over from one user to the other. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? You can't see, Tracy? Okay.
Now we see sort of half the slides.
You see half the slides. Okay. Well, Tracy might have to start sharing again. Let's see. How about now? Is it working?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Okay. So so OPWDD has actually recently updated their website, and it's actually amazing. In the past, it was really hard to find information, and recently they updated it. So they've made tabs and things very accessible. they've made things really accessible to finding information. So for example, if you go under general information, they have their contact, their email, they're all the local offices that you can go through. Obviously we would go through the Long Island office, but they have everything on there. So it's easily accessible and it's right at your fingers. In the past, this was not always so easy to navigate. Okay, let me get back to the slides. Okay. Once you're accepted, they're going to go through, typically this has been done as a phone interview with families. I say typically because sometimes things change faster with OPDD than we can keep up with. And we've been also in talks with them to kind of keep us in the loop so we can keep you in the loop of what's going on. But typically they'll go through this form with you. It's basically a demographic form. It'll ask the kinds of things that if there's any health issues, if there's any things going on in the family, if they're asking about are the children on medication, do they have any mobility issues, what are some of the things they can do physically, what are some of the OT needs. A lot of it's repeated in the documentation that they send, but this is kind of one centralized place where they can do like a quick assessment and have everything at their fingertips. And what this form does is it helps them assess what needs your child has and what services might be appropriate. And the most important thing that you're going to do once you finalize, you get accepted, or you can even do this now if you prefer. A lot of families like to do this as a precursor to getting accepted into the program. It also gives you more information about applying, and it also lets you know what services are available. They have these front door information sessions. And one of the amazing things about the pandemic that's come out of this is it's all virtual. So you no longer have to sit in central office, in a regional office in Long Island for 3 hours to listen to one of these trainings. You can now click on a link on your computer and access all the information at your convenience, right on your own computer. And so on their website, they have this tab and it has all the information sessions. They offer them very frequently, which is nice because they used to only do them like once a month. They have different times like 10 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I think they have various languages too. So it's nice because parents can kind of really pick and choose what's going to work for them and where they're going to be able to spend, get the most information from at a time that's convenient. Okay. What if my child is not accepted? So on occasion, we do have students that have been deemed ineligible. At times we've been able to go back with more information. Maybe it's more medical information. Maybe it's updated testing. It could be in any number of things. And the child has been found eligible. I encourage parents, if they've been denied, to go back and reapply with more information. Because a lot of times if they've denied you the first round, sometimes on the second round, you do get a closer look and things. Sometimes they do accept children on a appeal than the first round. So I wouldn't give up if if the child meets all the criteria. It would definitely be warranted to go through the appeal process, and we can help you do that. A lot of question I get a lot of times from families is what supports will I be eligible for? And again, a lot of this depends on the child, depends on what your child's needs are, depends on what the family's needs are, and depends on what OPWDD deems as appropriate. So again, on their website, they've updated all these beautiful services. They talk about care management, and they discuss what the different care management services that they're available. They have information about the types of services that they can provide. In the past, we've been able to get parents reimbursed for part of summer camp. They have housing and employment for older students, day services for older students. They'll do things like respite. Sometimes they'll do crisis intervention and self-direction. So these are all some of the services that parents can access once they get accepted into the program. They put together recently a beautiful book that's called Welcome to Front Door and OPWDD. They really outline their website. A lot of this information comes directly from their website. And there's access to service booklet, which I highly recommend parents go through. I'm going to just pull it up so you can see it. This is a great tool